While defining identifier, I cannot able to use final because it's a keyword. So keyword is nothing but the reserved word. If I don't want to extend the class, then what I'm going to do? I'm going to use the keyword final. However, we declare any method as final, then it means that we cannot override that method. Hello to all, a warm welcome to my new session on Finalizer. I'm your Revati ma'am, faculty from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So dear student, under this unit, once again, we are going to study about Finalizer. So what is the need of final keyword and where we can able to use final keyword. Before that, let me to recall the topic what I have discussed in my last session. That is, I started with constructors in Java. So dear student, when you encounter the keyword called constructor, then constructor is same as class name. So whatever the constructor I'm going to define, the constructor name must be same as class name, and constructors are nothing but methods. Okay, but what is the difference here? Constructor does not have any return type and constructor name must be same as class name. Along with that, I have discussed some of the rules used while defining constructor. So some of the rule I need to follow while defining constructor. Along with that, I have discussed two type of constructors, that is none other than default constructor and parameterized constructor. So what is default constructor? A constructor without parameters are known as default constructor. And what about parameterized constructor? There is nothing but constructor with parameters are known as parameterized constructor. Along with that, today's class, I'm going to discuss finally keyword final with class. That is nothing but the final keyword, then where I can able to use final keywords in my program. That is, with my class I can able to use final keyword. With my method I can able to use final keyword. With my variables I can able to use final keyword. Along with that, I'm going to have the finalize and I'm going to have the finalization. So dear student, please remember one thing, that from the examination point of view, this topic is very important and you can expect one sure question under this topic. Anyway, dear student, let's start our session with the concept final. So what is final? And we are going to encounter this word every day. So what is final? So final assessment, final match. So final in the sense what? We cannot able to change. So whatever it is decided, that is final. So I cannot able to modify or I cannot able to change. Even if I consider Java program, we can have the keyword called final. And while writing final, I want to use lowercase letter. So final is a reserved keyword. So it is already reserved. The meaning of the final is already defined and we cannot use it as an identifier. That means, dear student, while defining identifier, I cannot able to use final because it's a keyword. So keyword is nothing but the reserved word. So we can use these keywords with the variables, with methods and with class. That means while defining variables, I can able to use final keyword. While writing methods, I can able to use final keyword, as well as while defining the class, I can able to use final keyword. So final keyword in Java has different meaning. So dear student, if I consider variables, methods as well as class, and if I use final keyword with these things, then each will have different meanings. So the final keyword in Java has different meanings, that it depends upon the variables or class or methods. That means how I'm going to apply final keywords with variables, class and methods. It will have different meanings. So here final with variables. So final with variables in the sense what? Suppose if I use final keyword with the variables, what is the meaning here? That is nothing but whatever the value we are going to store or assign to that variable, which remains unchanged. So the value of the variable cannot be changed once it is initialized. So for example, if I have written a equal to 10 and it is final, then the value which I'm going to assign, that cannot be changed. So dear student, this is the simple program used to illustrate the use of final keyword with respect to variable. So dear student, what is my class name? A is nothing but my class name. Inside this, I have a method called main, and see here, I have the two variables A and B, and both are of type integer. See here, I'm going to assign 5 to A. Now see here, I'm going to create final variable. So I'm going to use the keyword final along with that data type, and B is nothing but my variable name, and I'm going to assign 6 to B. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to increment A value. So A is A equal to A plus 1, that is nothing but 5 plus 1, which is equal to 6. Now see here, I'm trying to modify B value. B is 6. So 6 plus 1, 7. So what is my intention here? I'm trying to modify B value. But what's going to happen? The compiler is going to generate error message, because the final keyword is used to define constant value, in the sense whatever the value I'm going to assign, I cannot able to change the value if I use final keyword with respect to variable. So dear student, see here, if I try to modify, so modify in the sense what? I'm trying to increment B value. So what's going to happen? That is nothing but compiler is going to generate an error message. So modify the final variable. So what is going to happen? You're going to get the compilation error. In the sense, compiler is going to generate some error. Now, I have the finally, that is final keyword with class. In the sense, I'm going to use the final keyword with my class. So, dear student, a class cannot be subclassed. So, dear student, what is subclassed and where we are going to encounter the word subclass? That is nothing but inheritance. So, dear student, suppose if child class want to acquire the properties of parent class, then I'm going to have the concept called inheritance. So, in inheritance, we come across superclass and subclass. So, superclass is nothing but the parent class, and subclass is nothing but the child class. Now, suppose if I want to avoid inheriting the features, then what I want to do? I just want to define my class with the keyword final. So, final in the sense what? The class cannot be subclassed. So, I cannot able to inherit. Whether we declare any class as final, it means that we cannot extend the class. Suppose if I don't want to extend the class, then what I'm going to do? I'm going to define that class as final. So dear students, suppose if I don't want to extend the class, then what I'm going to do? I'm going to use the keyword final. So we cannot make a subclass of that. That means I cannot able to extend the class. Now this is the simple example used to illustrate how I can able to use final keyword with class. So I'm going to start with the keyword final and I'm going to have the class called RR. Now, inside this, I'm going to have the main function, okay, and I'm going to assign A equal to 10. And now, I'm trying to inherit the features of RR in my KK. So, this is my parent class and this is my child class. Now, I'm trying to inherit the features of parent in child. So, what is going to happen? During the execution of the program, the compiler is going to generate an error that we cannot able to extend RR. So, I cannot able to inherit RR. Why? Because it is final. So, I cannot able to extend final or I cannot able to extend parent class RR. Now, dear student, I have final methods. So, final with method in the sense what? I'm going to apply final with my method. So, the method cannot be overridden. So, overridden in the sense what? Overwriting. There are certain time if base class as well as superclass have same methods, then base class is going to override the superclass method. So here, suppose I don't want to override the classes as well as methods, then what I'm going to do? I'm going to use final. So the method cannot be overridden by a class. So dear student, most of the time subclass methods are overridden. Okay, now what's going to happen? The method cannot be overridden by the subclass. So dear student, if I have same method in superclass and in my subclass, what's going to happen? The subclass is going to override the method. Okay, in the sense, the subclass method is going to override the superclass method. But I don't want to happen that. I want to avoid that. So what I'm going to do? I'm going to use the finally. That is final keyword with my method. However, we declare any method as final, then it means that we cannot override that method. So dear student, let me to consider simple example here. So dear student, see here, it is my class Q and I have the method called R and it is final method. And here I have the method called MM and it inherits the features of QQ. So inside this class, I have the method called RR. Okay, so both will have same signature. Now what's going to happen? This run method is going to override this run method. Now I want to avoid that. So what I'm going to do? I'm going to use this finally keyword so that the method which is present in the subclass cannot able to override the method which is present in the superclass. So this is the advantage of final or finally keywords when I use with variables or methods or class. Now dear student, I'm going to have the finalize. So dear student, we are going to come across the word called garbage collector. Garbage in the sense what? Some unwanted things. Okay, now the Java finalize method of object class is a method that garbage collector always calls just before the deletion or destroying the object which is eligible for garbage collection to perform cleanup activity. So dear student, this garbage collection, cleanup, end of the connection, okay, all those things we are going to come across exception handling, especially under finally. So dear student, in finally we are going to perform all the cleanup procedure as well as closing the connection, and all those things happens with respect to garbage collector. So dear student, suppose if I want to destroy the object or if I want to delete the object, then this garbage collector is going to perform all the cleanup activity. So cleanup activity in the sense what? Closing the network connection, closing the database connection, removing the memory. Okay, so once the memory is allocated, I just want to deallocate the memory. So all these cleanup procedures are going to happen. So here cleanup activity means closing the resources associated with the object. So dear student, when I create object, our object requires some resources. For example, you can consider keyboard. In the sense what? It want to receive user input. And how? Through the keyboard. So here keyboard is also resources. And if I consider memory, that's also example for resource. So here cleanup activity means closing all the resources associated with that object, in the sense database connection, network connection, and we can say resource deallocation. So make a note here, it is not a reserved keyword. Once the finalized method completes, immediately the garbage collector destroys the object. So dear student, when I want to perform any cleanup procedure, what I will do? I am going to call the finalize keyword. Okay, and it's going to call the garbage collector to destroy the object. Just before destroying any object, the garbage collector always calls finalize. So dear student, there is a connection between garbage collector as well as finalizer. Suppose if I want to make use finalize method in my program, then I must use garbage collector, because first finalize method is going to call. Once it is called, the next method is going to call as garbage collector. Why it's going to call garbage collector? Because it want to destroy the object. And why I'm going to call finalize? because I just want to perform all the cleanup activities in the sense closing network connection, closing database connection, deallocating all the resources, deallocating memory, etc. So this process is known as finalization in Java. So to performing the cleanup procedure or process is known as finalization in Java. So here this is the syntax. I want to use the access specifier that is protected. Then I want to specify the return type that is void, and finalize is a keyword, and throws is an exception handling mechanism, and we have the throwable. Okay, this is the syntax I want to use while using finalize keyword. Now, dear student, I'm going to have the simple example program. So here, what is my class name? That is demo. Okay, inside that, I'm going to have the finalize method. And this is used to perform all the cleanup procedure. Now, see here, I'm going to have the exception handling mechanism, and it is responsible for throwing some exception. Now, inside this, I have try. Here, I'm going to write the statement which is going to generate an error. So, here, this statement is going to generate some error. Suppose if it generates some error, what's going to happen? This catch block is going to handle an exception. Now, see here, this is the scenario I need to follow here. First, I have try. So, this try block is followed by the catch block, and this catch block must be followed by the finally. So, this is the sequence I need to follow while using exception handling. So, dear student, here I have the finally keyword. This finally keyword is responsible for performing all the cleanup procedure, and it is going to handle garbage collection. So, dear student, inside this I have the information called calling finalize method. Now, see here, I am going to call the super keyword with finalize. So, dear student, to invoke finalize method, I am going to use this super keyword. Now, inside this, I am going to write the main function, and I am going to create the object of the class demo, and with the object I am going to call the method called finalizer. And why I am going to call the finalizer? In order to close database connection, in order to close network connection, in order to deallocate resources, in order to deallocate memory, and the garbage collector as well as finalizer method is going to execute together, because when I call finally, what's going to happen? It's going to call finalizer, and it's going to perform all the cleanup procedure as well as the garbage collector is called in order to destroy the object. So, dear student, these are the usages of finalize keyword as well as finalize method in Java program. Anyway, dear student, in my today's session, I started with what is final. And the final keyword is used with respect to variable, with respect to method as well as with respect to class. Along with that, I have discussed what is finalizer and how we are going to use finalize and what are the benefits of finalize method as well as finalize keyword. Anyway, dear student, let's meet in the next session with the new concept that is visibility modifier. Until that, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.